Great Scott. Great Scott. Great Scott.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Great Scott. I'm Scotty V, and thanks for watching. Great Scott! The Batmobile! That's one of the subjects I wanted to talk about today. I also wanted to talk about this guy, as I've heard some things, and some fans seem to be annoyed. I think fans are just annoyed that Ben Affleck has been tapped to play Batman at all, and we kind of know that already based on looking at the internet. You know, back in 1989 when Michael Keaton was cast, I heard some things. People were surprised. Celebrities were surprised. If you read the paper or a magazine, it was kind of odd fan reaction, I guess. But it was nothing like these days where immediately upon anything being said about anybody, it's all over the internet, and mostly people are complaining about it. And I guess that's mostly the negative word fanboys. You know, fanboys can be used in a good way, but most of the time it's used to talk about the whining people who complain about everything. And I guess at times I could be considered one of those. But to be fair to myself, I've kind of been hired, so to speak, by the Superman homepage to do these little opines, these little opinion pieces, these little rants, and sometimes I am in a good mood, and I'm sometimes positive about what I'm speaking of. So I think it would be uninteresting if every week I came on here and I said, everything is great and roses and rainbows are fun. So I don't always do that, and now I wanted to say, and I've said this before, I think Ben Affleck has become a fine actor. I think he's a fine entertainer. I think he's a great filmmaker. I think he's good on the writing thing. And I think that's clear. And I think people who keep hearkening back to Daredevil are just, you know, finding something that they can pull apart, just like people always do. And I've been guilty of that kind of thing too. But he's recently, I guess, come out and said that Terrio's script is smart and unique to the genre and great, and he's so happy to be working on it. And somehow I've heard negative comments about this, so unless I've missed something else that he has said, I wanted to explain a little bit what I think he meant and how I think it might have been misconstrued. You know, some people think that it seems like him saying that this is smart and unique to the genre is crapping on comic books. And I don't necessarily think that's the case, because if you look at DC films since the Nolan franchise, they've all kind of said that kind of thing. Nolan, and now Snyder, and apparently Affleck now, and even Cavill for Man of Steel. The idea that this is not your father's Superman, the idea that this is not a comic book movie, the idea that these are serious movies to be taken seriously, that can win awards and be nominated for things and have great actors like Heath Ledger. These aren't comic book movies. Now, whereas Marvel, we've already said, has really embraced the comic book in their films and said, look at this comic book movie, isn't it awesome? And it's funny, and it's a little cheeky and a little corny, but that's okay, because it's not over-the-top camp like the Batman series, but there's some of that. It's not silly like the Donner film with Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, but there's some of that tongue-in-cheek humor, there's wittiness back and forth, and I love them. But then you got something different with DC, and they've kind of made it clear that we're not trying to do what Marvel's doing, although we want their success, so we're going to cram all these heroes in here. That's another thing. But we're more serious. We're darker. We want them to be. And I love that. So I like both for different reasons. But I don't think Ben Affleck is the first one to say things like, this is really smart for the genre, or this is really unique to the genre, and it's a really great script. And I think those things can be looked at in a positive way. It just depends on the way you decide to look at them. And I think a lot of times we as fans tend to lean to the negative when we're worried about something, or when we think that there could be problems with something based on casting, or based on script, or based on what came before, or based on too many heroes being crammed in. What if it's great? What if it's fantastic? What if it's awesome? But we're going to worry about it up until the fact that when we find out. And then even when we find out, we're going to have some issues anyway, and a lot of the people who have already made up their mind are going to stick in with that opinion. The other thing I wanted, and so I think that Ben Affleck is saying something positive, and I love the idea that he's saying Terrio's script is great. And he, of course, has worked with Terrio before, so what else would he say? And I also think it's kind of an edict from DC. Like, let's talk about these films as if they weren't comic book films. Even though they're based on comic book characters, they don't feel like comic book films the way Marvel movies do. So, and we want to get more of the audience that's not just comic book people are going to go anyway because it's a Superman movie with Batman in it, or it's a Batman movie with Superman in it, or it has other heroes in it. But let's get other people to go. The other thing I wanted to say was this Batmobile. I don't know what the hell I'm looking at, but I hate it. So if you were looking for a fanboy complaining rant, here it is. I hated it in the Nolan movies. That's not the Batmobile. The Batmobile is a sports car with weapons and armor, and it looks cool, and it's got that jet engine in the back. It's not a tank. It doesn't have gigantic wheels, and it doesn't look like this unwieldy thing that you couldn't drive around. It's a sleek, machine that has weapons on it sometimes, but is really fast and really cool. People, I guess, liked the Tumbler because it was realistic or whatever. Why, since Nolan films are separate, they're going with the Tumbler again. It's not supposed to be the same Batman because he's going to have this armor with the glowing eyes, which is definitely not the realistic tone of the Nolan films. So why do we have what seems to be an exact copy, replica of the Batmobile from the Nolan films? It's a grainy image, but when you see it, it certainly looks like the Tumbler, and I'm annoyed. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and remember, holy cow, the Batmobile!